I am the Indy 2000, and I am here in my chair of wisdom, and I plan to take over the entire Milky Way galaxy. But to do so, I must first answer all your questions about the First World War, First World War, First World War, First World War.
All right, what do we got? We got what were pioneers and how did they differ from regular infantry or engineers? One of my ancestors was in the 5th Pioneers Battalion in the AIF, and I was wondering what pioneers really were. What were their roles and how did they differ from regular infantry or engineers? Did other nations have a similar sort of unit? Pioneer battalions were light infantry engineers who operated close to the front lines. Now, most countries had combat engineers grouped together in pioneer battalions. Their expertise was in building and repairing and maintaining basic infrastructure for the army. Things like, roads, railways, telegraph lines, bridges. But close to the front, they were also experts in fortifying dugouts and trenches, much more so than the regular soldier, who often had to improvise. And as the war progressed, those pioneers became ever more essential to the war and the war effort. During the German spring offensives, for example, while German pioneers bridged gaps on the battlefield for the artillery to advance, the pioneers of the Entente blew bridges or erected obstacles on the battlefield to delay the German advance. Pioneers were not usually thrown into combat like the regular soldiers, since their knowledge and their expertise made them more valuable. They would usually remain in their supporting roles. Okay, here's one. Hi, Indy and crew. Love the show. I have heard that in April 1918, a German submarine was attacked by the Kraken. Do you have any information on it? Is there any other report of a sea monster attacking a ship in World War I? Keep up the great work. This is probably a surprise to many of you. According to the myth, a German type UB-3 U-boat, the UB-85, once patrolled the North Channel, which is the strait between the Irish Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. On April 30th, the UB-85 and its commander, Günther Krech, were surfaced to, just take some rest. But suddenly, the ship rocked, and a big Kraken-like sea monster appeared. It sabotaged the 105mm deck cannon, and the crew fired their secondary weapons at it. The submarine was heavily damaged, so it could not submerge. This enabled the British ship Coreopsis II to then capture the crew without killing anyone. Günther Krech allegedly claimed that the beast had large eyes set in a horny sort of skull. Now, this is, in fact, a legend. The reality is that a heater in the officer's compartment disabled and prevented the hatches from closing properly, and this caused the submarine to take water and begin to sink. The commander then ordered the ballast blown, and the submarine resurfaced. The crew escaped the flooded interior of the U-boat and assembled on the deck of the ship. The Coreopsis then was able to capture the crew without resistance, since the ammunition was inside the flooded submarine. So where does the story come from? Well, according to maritime historian Dr. Innes McCartney, the legend doesn't appear anywhere before surfacing on the internet in 2005. There are more tales, of course, about monsters and disappearing ships, like the USS Cyclops, a Proteus-class collier cargo ship, vanished on March 4th, 1918 in the Bermuda Triangle. 306 passengers and crew members disappeared without a trace. And just like that, they were gone. Okay, another question. Yep. Let's see. How did Austro-Hungary redeploy its troops after Russia left the war? Could they provide any soldiers for the spring offensive? Okay, the German spring offensive. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on March the 3rd, 1918, officially ended the fighting between the former Imperial Russian Army and the Central Powers. Now, the fighting on the southern front there had only been sporadic since the aftermath of the Kerensky Offensive, the summer of 1917, which did give the wavering Austro-Hungarian army a well-needed respite. Now, this allowed Austrian High Command to draw its best troops away from the Eastern Front and retrain them while often only what was really a token force manned the lines in the quiet sectors of the front. It was in Germany's best interest, though, for the empire to focus its strength on the Italian front and threaten the Entente's forces there. Although a handful of Austrian engineers and heavy artillery were sent to the Western Front, in support of the German spring offensives. And a detachment of soldiers was sent to the Ukraine as well. Oh, not the Ukraine, just Ukraine. Okay, that's all for today. If you'd like to see our episode where the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed, you can click right here for that. And what should you do? You should like us on Facebook. I even check us out on Facebook, and there's cool stuff on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.